Hi, Dr. Paul Haider here. I want to tell you a true story about a mother who found what was important in life. She was born in the first part of the 1900s, and she was dirt poor. And in the family, their father worked on the railroad for a while, but he was always changing jobs. And about two steps in front of the bill collector, actually. So they're always moving. I never stayed in one place very long. And they lived in lots of different places and all over the central United States. And so they tried to make ends meet as best as possible. They had 9 kids, so running around, they would have fun though. They would go down to the streams and try to catch trout there. They would go out in the woods, and because they really needed it, also they would collect morel mushrooms and other mushrooms, and they would go out and pick mustard and different greens, and lo and behold, that helped her to stay very healthy most of her life also. And so it was important to allow themselves to get out into nature, and they did a lot of that. And we know you have 8 brothers and sisters. You can't stack them in the house. You have to get out there, outside. In fact, the mother would kept saying, "Yeah, get out of the house, get out of the house. Go play outside." And so that was really important. But you have a lot of camaraderie when you have a whole bunch of brothers and sisters. And they would, during the wintertime, they would take anything they could find, inner tubes or whatever, and slide down the hills on the snow. And I had a great time with that also. And they would also go see their grandmother in Indiana and grandfather, and they had a big ranch there, farm actually, I should say, and they would do a lot of canning and different things, and they had a big root cellar, and they learned a lot from their grandmother about making apple butter and then lifting up the mold on top and then scooping out the apple butter that was underneath and putting it back down, putting the potatoes down there and all kinds of different things. And so they had a real chance to be farmers with their grandparents. So that was pretty amazing for them. Then they would go there every year and during the summertime and enjoy, and sometimes even during the winter, and enjoy a little respite with grandmother and grandfather. And she ended up being around 16, and she ended up having some challenges at home, and so she left and ended up going to some of her aunts and uncles in California, and she wanted to be a movie star. In fact, there's a lot of aspiring movie stars wanted to be, but she ended up going to a college in California and ended up meeting a wonderful young man. They fell in love, and within 2 weeks, and they got married. And from there, her husband went on to, he was going to be a medical doctor, but he decided he needed to take care of his wife and support her, so he dropped out of school. And he started farming. And first they raised tomatoes, and he did pretty well with tomatoes. And then they started raising turkeys, and they had 3,000 turkeys, and they all got disease, and they lost everything, and then they went bankrupt on that. And that was difficult. But her husband had a strong feeling of great faith, and that kind of rubbed off on her also. She didn't really have that much of an upbringing with faith, but her husband did. And that kind of rubbed off on her, and she started picking that up. And so she started having great faith in God and the universe, and great spirit also. And after a while, their first child came along, and they were living in a little trailer at that point. But before that, they lived in a little shack with isinglass windows. with no glass in the windows, isinglass. Have you ever seen isinglass? You can't really see through it. It lets light in, but it doesn't really, you can't see through it. And then they had an outhouse also, and it was out by the creek, and so they had to run out to the outhouse in the middle of the night. And it was kind of difficult because other people wanted to live there, so they had people coming to the door in the middle of the night. So my dad had to be a little bit strong with them. Says, "No, we're not leaving, and this is our place here." So very interesting. It's kind of a tough times. You know, this is just before the Big Depression and right after the Big Depression also, and so it was tough for them. And then their first son came along, and they moved to a little trailer on a piece of property where an old man, he had a huge 18-room house, and he needed somebody to take and be a caretaker for that house. And so these couple stepped up to take care of that house for him. And the first son was born in that little tiny trailer. I mean, a little green tiny trailer. Pretty amazing. And so the husband went on to work for a big conglomerate agri-farm, and he started raising rice. And he would do all the work of raising rice, and he had a percentage. It was a percentage farmer, and he would get a percentage at the end of the year. They got paid once a year. Lots of people get paid every week or every month, and they figure out how can they make that stretch. But I tell you, this lady was really good at making the money stretch out over one full year. And they did grow a huge garden every year, and the husband was really good at composting, and they had huge piles of compost, and they were turning it over constantly. And they had another son about 3 years later, and the two boys would get out and play and climb trees, and they were always swimming in the irrigation ditches that were next door to them. It was like, you know, stones thrown away. They were going down these big eucalyptus trees that were very close by, and watching nature. And there was a big pump down at the other end of near the other end of the house, and sometimes they go down there. And when the water well went out, they would go down and get 5-gallon buckets of water and bring those back to the house because they needed water. And sometimes it would happen. Sometimes electricity would go out. Sometimes a big air tank, pressure tank would get waterlogged, and they had to drain it. And so sometimes we were out of water sometimes, so they would go down and get the water. And it had a big lane, and it had a huge amount of these cottonwood trees on both sides, and it was just beautiful. And there was cottonwood trees around the whole huge house. It was 18 rooms, and they don't make them like that anymore. Big, huge brick house. And they ended up staying there for many, many years. In fact, the husband ended up, being one of the most important sharecroppers for this big agricorp companies around. And they had thousands of acres he took care of that was all rice. And they had great times. All the two sons would go out there, and they would do fishing, and they were hunting and different things, and enjoyed nature, just being out in nature in general. And they would go out there every day with their father and help them in the rice, putting in the rice boxes, pulling out the rice boxes after everything was harvested, or just before the harvest, they pull out the rice boxes. You knew a lot of different farmers, so they go out and get tomatoes and honeydew melons and pears and all kinds of different things, peaches and apricots and different things. And the father was very well liked and well known, and so was the mother. And they were loved by a lot of people because they were always giving a lot of things away and helping people in whatever way they could. I remember they would give a whole bunch of honeydew melons to people. They would give peaches to people, apricots to people, uh, big lug boxes full of tomatoes to people and helping people in whatever way. I remember the mother and the father, they were having Thanksgiving one day, one Thanksgiving, and here's the sons are there. And across the way, across the street is uh, some people from Mexico who were, they did cleaning of yards and that type of thing. And it's Thanksgiving, and the person who owns the house across the street made them come and clean the yard on Thanksgiving. So it kind of upset the husband and the mothers, but so they invited them to come into the house and have Thanksgiving with them. And so they would sit there and enjoy the meal, and they were always uh, more than welcome to share food and help people. And the father was a very wise man and always imparting different wisdom to the kid. And the mother was, she was a good bookkeeper, and she took care of their house, and she took care of the kids, and they also had some acreage after that a little later, and they had horses, and they had some cattle and sheep, 19 sheep in fact, and she took care of the kids and tried as best as possible to teach them, wisdom, and teach them, be honorable people. And it's not easy when you have, a couple of big boys, and then later came along a couple girls, and so that was very interesting. I think the father had a harder time with the girls because he was used to having guys around. It wasn't easy with girls, but they were a big loving family, and I think that's what the mother got most out of the whole process. Now, she ended up being in her 80s and changing from the inside out. She came from a family that was a little abusive, and she was kind of running away from that. But at the end, she found love with her family. And I think that's what life is all about. Well, I have to disclose this. This family is my family, and that's my mother. And she's in her 80s now, and she has heart failure. And yesterday, she was in the hospital, and her efficiency of her heart has gone from 60% to 40%. And she may not be with us that much longer. But she's had a great life and had a great family, and there's not a whole lot that modern medicine can do, or even herbal medicine can do once the heart gives out. And in your 80s, you're not a candidate for a heart-lung transplant, But I've been keeping close in touch with her. I call her every single day, and we talk. And I think that's important. We've talked out all the things we need to talk about. We've talked about everything. All the stuff that might have been the ills of the family, everything that needed to be healed, we've talked about. Everything that needed to be disclosed, we talked about. And I think that's really, really super important that we allow ourselves to get close to our parents and, talk about the things that we need to know. I know when my father died, and he was just 57, it was just like that. He had a stress-induced heart attack and died. And I never got to say some of the things I needed to say to him, And I think that's it's really important. I have a lot of people that come to me, and they know their parent is older, and they don't want them to die, but it's inevitable. We all come to this world, and we all leave this world. But I can tell you one thing for sure. I have seen the other side, and the veil is very thin, and the heaven is real. There's no doubt about it. I've seen what that is. And so we all have to embrace our loved ones the best way we can. And You know, it's not been easy in the last few days, learning about my mother being losing her heart function. It's just slowly going down. At 40% now, it may stay for weeks, it may stay for a few months, we don't know. But it's about just loving her for who she is. And I think we have to remember the good times. And I think that, you know, there were also some hard times and bad times, and I think it's important just to kind of remember those, but just kind of push them off to the back, because we all go through those, and then we make us stronger. And it's about allowing ourselves to remember the love. I remember one Christmas that my mom was always up wrapping presents, you know what I mean? Till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. She would always put it off till then anyway. And I was in high school, and I wasn't supposed to be up anyway. Oh, I think it was maybe junior high, and I came in, I said, Mom, I really don't want anything else from you except for a hug. And I gave her a hug, and she gave me a hug, and it's one of the things that I have remembered all my life. And I think that's what life is all about. Remembering the love, remembering the close connections that we have with people. And I have the same memories of my father. It's just, he was a very loving man. And so, remember that love is the one thing that we take away from this planet. When we leave and go to the other side of the veil, that is the one lesson that we learn. And I think that's the one lesson my mom did learn here, is the love of family, the love of friends, the love of those who care about us, and about helping and giving and caring and making a difference in people's lives. And that's what it's all about. Oh boy, it's not easy when you have somebody that's going to pass away, even though I've been preparing myself for a long, long time. Anyway, I always care about all of you, and I love you. I love you. And if you care to subscribe, please do that down below. And if you care to make a donation, that is greatly appreciated. And I need to go back and see my mom. She's in California. I'm here, and I kind of need a little help to get the plane fare. So if you care to make a donation to help that would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Anyway, and if you want to make a connection with me, all my contact information is down below. So feel free to contact me anytime. And remember, all my consults are free, whether it be spiritual or herbal, and I'm always here for you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I love you.